We do indeed today launch our annual Adventures in Prosperity, and it has this year a very clear and courageous theme: Spirit, Money, and You. Spirit, money, and you. Now, let's from the very beginning acknowledge that true prosperity is far more than money. We acknowledge that from the beginning. We understand that prosperity is the enhancement and the expansion of virtually everything in our life. All right? And I think there are times when it is going to serve us to focus in on money so that we can heal a lot of the hang-ups that we have around that, so that we can also realize its deeply spiritual basis and then go forward joyfully to attract it and to put it to good use in our life. So that then brings us to this theme and to today's first installment in these 5-part series, and that is Money is God in Action. I got to tell you, I don't believe there is any area in most people's lives where there is more superstition, misconception, struggle, pain, and fear than in their relationship with money. Oh my goodness, it's amazing. The great Joe Louis once said, "I don't like money, but it quiets my nerves." We give money such power, you know. We give it such power. People give money the power to chart their course in life. They give money to give them a sense of security. They give power to it to do that. They give power to money to even ostensibly create their fulfillment and their happiness. I wonder, does money deserve that much power, really? And then we blame money for just about anything and everything, don't we? Oh, we blame money for our setbacks, for our betrayals. We blame money for divorces, for poor decisions. We blame money for hanging out in unfulfilling experiences like unfulfilling jobs or relationships. We blame money for the atrocities and the challenges and the upsets in the world. We blame money for just about all misery and unhappiness. When you really boil it down, though, to one of its more basic levels, it is simply some material items we've assigned some value to use for the exchange of goods and services. But look at the power that it has taken on, the stigma that it's taken on as well. I love the great story. Maybe you remember the one about the little lady who had her beloved cat Fluffy for years and years and years. She had Fluffy, loved Fluffy. Oh, they were so close. But then Fluffy, after many, many years, left to meet Fluffy's maker. She died, and the little lady was so heartbroken. She then went to her priest, and she said, oh, Father, please, will you do the sacred rites for Fluffy? Will you give Fluffy a funeral? And the priest looked down his nose at her and said, my child, we do not do that in this church. You must go find your closure in other ways, child. Go find it in other ways. And she lamented. She said, oh, all right, Father. I just don't know what I'm going to do for my Fluffy. And I don't know what I'm going to do with the $10,000 I was going to contribute for those rites. I don't know what to do. And he perked up and he says, well, excuse me, ma'am, you didn't tell me that Fluffy was Catholic. You see the power that money wields. It's an amazing thing. It seems to me it's time for us to discover the spiritual bottom line of money, and then also to regain the sense of peace and power that comes with that. Now, I believe that the reason that money is such a big deal to folks and a struggle for folks is part of a worldview that many hold, and that is that reality is basically physical, and then that who they are as a human being is primarily a physical being. Now, when you've got things sized up that way, that the world is just physical stuff, and so am I, what that leads to then is an attachment to the physical world and all of its aspects, all of its products. And so, when we're coming from that space, we get attached to the physical things of our lives and are afraid we might lose them. We get attached to money. And then we eventually will come to that beautiful moment of awakening, wherein we become aware that life is so much more than the physical. And modern science has proven that, but sometimes we're slow to get that message. The ancient mystics also declared it over and over and over again, that life is primarily spiritual and invisible. And when we understand this, when we see the larger scope of that, then we realize that we're not just physical beings with limited opportunities, we are spiritual beings with awareness that has unlimited potential in it. And then, having discovered this inner truth, we're ready then to discover the inner truth about money and allow that to begin to transform things in our life. You see, everything has a surface. You know, there's like a wheel, there's the surface of the wheel, and many folks just primarily and continually hang out at the surface. But everything also has its center, and its cause, and its spirit. And so does money. Now, if you just hang out at the surface level of money, if you have a surface relationship, then it's an object that has a certain quantity value that we've all agreed upon, and that's the limit of it. It's a surface and a quantity relationship. But we will never master money in our lives as long as we hold on to that surface or quantity relationship alone. You know, true empowerment comes when we discern and understand the depth of money, and we create a quality relationship with it, not just a quantity one, wherein we understand the deeper life that moves by means of money. And we understand that about money, and it transforms everything. Arnold Patton, in one of his books, writes, if we believe that God is an entity that exists outside of us, an entity that is sometimes loving and at other times angry and vengeful, our lives will mirror this belief by occasionally being filled with love and at other times filled with hardship and suffering. I pause here. He's saying that basically our sense of God in the universe then gets projected onto everything in our life. Everything in our life. He goes on the other hand, when we feel and know that God is the oneness, and that the oneness is love, and that each of us is this oneness, life becomes a continuously loving journey. As our connection with God expands, we bring this richness more fully into every aspect of our lives, including our relationship with money. What if money is more than we ever thought? Not just that stuff we scrounge and struggle to get, fear we won't have, cringe at ever releasing, but what if it's actually a deeply spiritual instrument that we can use with wisdom and power in our life? You know, our founders of this nation, they believed in a society of pluralism, many religions, despite what historical revisionists are trying to do right now. They were also mystics, and they were metaphysicians. They're very mystical. And they knew that our sense of money derives from our sense of God. And they wanted our money system to be imbued with this sense of the Spirit at the heart of it all. And so that's why if you look at our various aspects of currency, you see these little reminders throughout. For instance, on every dollar bill and coin, you're going to see this phrase, "In God we trust." As an extension of God is our money. And on the dollar bill and on all coins, you'll see this Latin phrase, "E pluribus unum," meaning out of the many, one. Their deep realization that out of the multiplicity of all of life, there's a oneness that unites it all. And then there's the great seal on the dollar bills, which is the anchor of our currency, the dollar bill. And I love that. There are two Latin phrases. The one at the top, "Annuit Keptus," means God blesses all our undertakings. What a wonderful affirmation. And then underneath it, "Novus Ordo Seclorum," meaning a new order of the ages. The Founding Fathers realizing that in a land designed to give creative freedom to beings, to grow, to explore, to innovate, was a new order of the ages, a new order. But my favorite of all the symbols is the pyramid, First, because it represents the solidity that we want to build and the balance between all of the sides, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and experiential sides of life, spirit, soul, and body, the all in balance. And yet, as you notice in this particular one, the capstone is separated. And in it is the image of the all-seeing eye of the divine, the wisdom, the light of the divine. And I'm reminded in Scripture, it says, if thine eye be single, thy whole body will be filled with light. Now, the symbolism is that all of our endeavors, in that separation there, all of our endeavors need to be crowned with the guidance, the awareness, the power of the all-seeing eye, the all-seeing truth, the God mind in and through us. And that's why that is there. I just love all of this symbolism because they clearly knew that money was a sacred vehicle and they didn't want us to forget that. Oh, it seems to me that it's time to lift money out of the doldrums. Take your dollar out of the doldrums, for crying out loud. And it's time for us to seize upon the deep and sacred energy of that, align with it so that it could move gracefully and abundantly in our lives, no longer restricted, no longer a point of fear or pain in our lives. So the first thing we need to do on this adventure in faith, embrace the essence of money. Not just your quantity relationship with it, but the essence of it. Now, a very powerful prosperity principle is that if you want to create anything in your life or manifest anything, you must first embrace and embody its essence. Now, this is fundamental, no matter what it is. Let's say you want love in your life. It's not about praying for someone to show up. What it is first primarily, and what our prayer accomplishes, is that we embrace and we embody love. And as we show up as love, then we call in love. We attract love to us. We become attractive because of that. Same with prosperity. You can pray for all the prosperity, but are you embracing and embodying prosperity? Have you really taken on the prosperity consciousness and stopped judging your prosperity by what you feel you have or don't have, how much money you have or you don't have, but you start identifying yourself as a prosperous being? The same with money. Instead of thinking of it as hard to get and essential to hold on to, as struggling with it, of resenting it if it hasn't been bestowed upon you, we have the opportunity, especially this month, to embrace the essence of money. Now, if you're new to this teaching, just a little bit of background about this. We know that there's only one ultimate life in this universe. Now, you can call that God or spirit or love or energy or whatever you choose, doesn't matter the name, there's only one. And we know that this one has created out of itself everything that is, the entire cosmos, you and me as well. And everything that is lives within that oneness. We're not separate from our God or from our source. And we're all avenues by which the source is exalting and expressing itself. How beautiful to know this. Take it in your heart. It's a whole new sense that God is not a separate being doling out a little bit of good, but it's the very life in which we live, move, and have our being. And that divine life is essentially and intrinsically abundant and is abundance. So as we know that, then we know that at the heart of everything, and most especially at the heart of this stuff that we create to convey creativity, to convey agreements and energy and transactions between ourselves, that it's really the intermingling of our spirits, our ideas, our commerce, our motives, our desire to grow things. And understand that the intention of the one life is always to grow and evolve and prosper all of its creation, because that furthers its own self-expression. So at the heart of money is this spiritual impulse to evolve life itself. It's an instrument for spiritual activity and evolution. That's the essence of money. And also remember that also God is love. And so this energy permeating the entire universe, producing the universe, is also love. So this divine energy is the means by which the livingness and the love of the divine can go forth. When you hold that in your hand, that's the secret. That's the essence of money. And to know this and to relate to that in your heart of hearts is incredibly powerful. Eric Butterworth, he writes, money is an enabling symbol that gives rise to faith and trust, credit and cooperation, which starts the flow of activity. I take $50 and give it to the grocer, and he gives me some food. He gives the money to the suppliers, and they to the farmer, who uses the money to buy seed and feed. Round and round it goes in a process we call the economy. But back of it all comes the basic substance of life, harnessed and directed by the activity of faith. And so he says, get the positive thought. Money is good. Money is God in action. Say that with me. Money is God in action. And money is love in action. Money is love in action. This is embracing the essence of money. Now, when we do that, then what we can do is take the next step, and that is transform your experience of money. It's one thing to know the deeper truth about money, but we all have a built-up experience of it. And usually it comes from our old teachings. Maybe you were taught that money's terrible and evil. But how could that be? Money is a part of this divine energy. Now, any energy can be used constructively or destructively. Just like electricity, it's powering this room in many ways. It powers hospitals. It does wonderful stuff. You can also burn houses down with it or kill yourself. It's an energy that's used according to the consciousness using it. So we got to look at that. Have you decided, can you forgive money? Let it off the hook. You know, it didn't do all that terrible stuff. It's the consciousness that was using it. Money is good. Can we stop resenting money? Can we stop fearing about it? And maybe take away that whole idea that, well, money doesn't love me. I love it, but it doesn't love me. It wasn't somebody who said, money talks, that I'll not deny. It spoke to me once, it said, bye-bye. You know, can we get beyond that kind of stuff and start healing with money? Healing the idea that it's only going to be in scarce measure in my life, and I better scrounge it and hold it back. And really begin to put a balm on that. Look at the myriad of ideas and beliefs that you might have about money, how you even may tense up when we even talk about it. Or there may be a voice in you saying, I didn't know churches talked about this, and all this kind of stuff. Maybe we can look at that panorama of different ideas. I love what a college student once put on his recording on his message machine. It's beautiful. He said, "Hi, this is Dave. If this is the phone company, I sent the money. If this is mom or dad, please send money. If it's a friend, you still owe me money. If it's financial aid, you didn't loan me enough money. If it's a female, leave a message and don't worry, I got plenty of money." The panorama of the different responses and ideas about money. Where are you with that? Would you be willing to be very intent this month to observing your feelings and your words and your thoughts about money? That you might remind yourself, money is God in action. It's sacred. It flows. It's available. And it has the possibility of being the instrumentality for doing beautiful things, for blessing me and for others. And I bless it. Were you willing to watch all those responses and begin to neutralize those that will only go forth to inhibit you and limit you? Letting those go. Knowing the truth about money. Think it, speak it, feel it, enact it. As money comes along, bless it. Be willing to let it go too, because it's a part of a greater flow. Bless it. Be grateful for it. Be grateful for all the money that you have. No longer taint it with not enoughness. It's a symbol of the divine givingness. Bless it. Love it. Share of it. See what begins to shift in your life as you begin to transform your experience of money. You see, your experience is up to you. You have created your experience, and you can transform it. And if it hasn't worked for you, maybe this is why you're here. Maybe that's why we do this, is to begin to transform that so that things can work in our lives. Right? So transform your experience of money. And then I also invite you then to cultivate your expression of money. That's the third thing. Cultivate your expression of money. I believe that we're all here to be points of distribution for the unlimited good of God. You and I are designed ideally to be outlets for the good of God. But most lives get congested by fear and they close down the outlet. And thus, things begin to dry up. It's time to open up. Understanding that all energy, and again, money is a divine energy, it's a love energy, all energy is designed to flow, not be hidden, not be cramped up, but to flow. That's why money is called currency. It's a flow. It's a part of this river of activity. It's a part of the enterprises of the Spirit going forth through you and me. And so we can shift that understanding and lift up how we're using it and using it for good things. I remember in my life that when I felt personally unworthy, when I felt personally needy, I misused money. I used it to try to fill the emptiness in me with things and experiences. And I would only later realize that they weren't great choices, that using the money for that didn't have the power to fill this within me because it was an illusion in the first place. And when this teaching opened me up to the higher truth, I felt that void dissolved. I saw that void as an illusion. Some of that early programming, as Randolph shared with us, that we all take on in different ways, different kinds of that early stigma that we take on in our lives. But when we know the truth, that we're one with God, that we're a child of God, that we're special, that we're beautiful, every one of us, God ordained, something within us becomes full and complete. We're no longer striving for things to make it complete. The way we use money shifts entirely. It's no longer that thing we're trying to use to give us an experience. It's an expression of our heart. It's an expression of our joy. It's an expression of our creativity. Everything shifts with that. I've always loved what Walt Disney wrote about money. He said, I've always been bored with just making money. I've wanted to do things. I want to build things, get something going. I'm not like some people who worship money as something you've got to have piled up in a big pile somewhere. I've only thought of money in one way, and that is to do something with it. There is a really healthy attitude with it. Have some savings? Sure. But more than anything, be in the flow of this. Every one of us can be a philanthropist for God. How about you thinking of yourself in that terms? I choose to be a philanthropist for God. I'm here to help build up life. I'm an instrument of the divine. I'm not here to try to hoard and hold on out of fear and insecurity. I'm given everything. I'm a part of divine abundance. Therefore, I'm a philanthropist for God. In my own way, I am going to find ways to lift up life and contribute to life. And I tell you, when you make that kind of decision, you will prosper. Life will support you because you're opening up to your destiny while you're here. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Meet Lawrence Bloom. Lawrence Bloom. Let me tell you about him. One day, years ago, he sat in his luxury Mercedes outside of his 7-bedroom home with 5 bathrooms in it, and he realized that he still felt the same anxiety he felt when he had none of that. He said he felt that familiar charge of fear course through his veins, and he asked himself, is this it? And then he said, I had reached that material place where everyone aspires to be. And for me, anxiety was like a coat hanger. The jacket that I had worn before that moment was, will I ever make it? And now that jacket had changed to, will I ever keep it? And then we get into that. We get into thinking that we justify and fulfill ourselves through the manifestation of things. Then we just get anxious about trying to hold on to them. And in no way are we really living and thriving. And he wasn't. In fact, he said that moment was like a crossroads, a tipping point for him. But it didn't start out easily. For the next 3 years, by his own admission, he just got drunk. He got drunk. He said it was the 70s. It was very easy to hide it then, as everyone was doing it. And then I realized what the problem was. My soul wasn't being nourished. It was then that I decided to become a man of right action and to use my money very differently. So he began to shift the orientation of his very successful companies. He would later be called an earth guru. In fact, as he recharged his teams and his leaders in his various organizations, his vision was, I want to help this earth be sustainable. It was his teams that invented the cards that now universally show up in all hotel rooms around the world, inviting us to reuse our towels and not have our beds changed every single day. That was his initiative. They invented that. And he's gone on to do many other such initiatives. He's the founder and chairman of a foundation called B Energy that works for sustainable projects and sustainable goals in our culture. And he has found that his whole life has shifted. He is now prosperous because he's a part of a higher order of living. He's using his money to express at a much higher level than he ever did before. And he's feeling such joy in life. But he credits this to a spiritual transformation, one we can all make. He writes, our current world lens is that we see ourselves as separate from the earth, which gives us life, separate from the cosmos that gave us birth, separate from each other. Ultimately, many are even separate from ourselves. So we have lost our connection with our inherent nature. But every decision we make on the basis that we're separate is a fracture, a schism, and a breakdown. While every decision based on the fact that we're one leads to harmony, peace, and a really brilliant future for our children. He's transformed his expression. And he's happier and more prosperous than he's ever been. Lawrence Bloom. I know people in this very church who are doing the same thing. They busy themselves about certain enterprises in their life, but then they have other things they do that really make a difference. Maybe it's those, so many of you who are in our ministry of service, that's part of your calling, is to be that opening through which the divine can abundantly express. And your givingness is so appreciated. And I know that many of you who financially support this ministry so powerfully, you know that it's doing good work and you want to be a part of that. And I love and appreciate that. I'm thinking of another wonderful church member, Frosty Wooldridge, who's a great adventurer, rides his bike all over the place from one continent to another, does great adventures, climbs mountains and all these kinds of things. And yet his heart has also called him to work to stem the tide of overpopulation. And he's got all this knowledge and research, and he tries to awaken our leaders and our organizations to the precipice we're approaching. And that's his calling. What's your calling? What's your calling? And do you know how powerful it is to say yes, as Cheryl sang, to that higher expression of your energies and the energy that is money? I tell you, it's a wonderful thing when we do that. When we start embracing the essence of money, we start transforming our whole relationship with it and then expressing it at a higher level, life turns around and it becomes this wonderful, wonderful thing. I love the Ashley Brilliant cartoon where there's a caricature drawing of him. And it says, I'd gladly participate in any experiment to test the effects on me of sudden great wealth. How about you? Would you sign up for that? Well, let's go for it this month. Let's let go of the old nonsense and come into the truth and see our lives blossom and flower. What do you think?